Hello class, welcome back to our video review of David Brooks's essay, It's Not About You. Make sure that you understand when you refer to a singular noun, the apostrophe, because he is one person, David Brooks. If you say Brooks's essay, Brooks apostrophe S. The only way you can get away with just using an S and apostrophe is if the noun ending in S is a plural noun. If you said the Brooks family, you could go Brooks apostrophe. So, right off the bat, when we want to think about the essay from a rhetorical analysis perspective, first thing, always consider the title, right? It's not about you. Essentially, what is Brooks doing here? He's starting with contrast, right? He's starting with the opposite of what some claim, right? It's all about you, it's all about me, right? So he's starting with that contrast, and I think that when you look at both sides of things, it definitely demonstrates Rogerian argument. But again, he does use the word not. So he does start with a negative connotation in some ways. Rather than say what he thinks it is about, he says what it's not about. It gets your attention. And I think it definitely is a rhetorical strategy to look at things from multiple perspectives. So we see that in the title. Next up, consider the visual that accompanies this essay, right? If you contrast his picture with the picture of Rachel Cobb on 109, which is the sample student essay that does a rhetorical analysis of Brooks's essay, which we will read as a great example of rhetorical analysis to emulate, we can see the difference in the pictures. She's smiling, right? And there's like a landscape behind her, greenery, nature. His picture, black background, he looks very stern, looks very serious, right? And he's wearing a shirt and tie. Again, when we think about appeals to emotion, you want to consider visuals, images, colors, layout, right? Format, things of that nature. So he chose that picture for a reason. And I think it definitely makes an argument. As we said, everything's an argument. It's not just words, it's also visuals. So he starts with this address, if you would, about the idea of graduates and what their expectations are, and he begins with what seems to be common, right? Over the past few weeks, America's colleges have sent another class of graduates off into the world. But then, if you look in paragraph 2, we have that contradictory word "but," where he changes his position. But especially this year, one is conscious of the many ways in which this year's graduating class has been ill served by their elders. So essentially, he's looking at what college students, in particularly graduates, are told, what their expectations are, and then what the realities are. Um, and I think that he does a nice job of giving clear details. Now, again, you don't have to agree with him. What's interesting is his use of counter argument and contrast. He uses the word "but" a lot, and he looks at both sides of things, and that's what you want to do when you make a Rogerian argument. Again, you don't have to agree with the counter argument, the opposite of what your argument is, but it demonstrates that you're fair and that you're a Rogerian thinker when you address it, right? And demonstrate empathy. Essentially, though, his point is he says, these are what the expectations are, right? This is what you're told, but then this is the reality. And if you'll look with me on page 107, the first indented paragraph says, but of course, this mantra misleads on nearly every front. The mantra, right? The idea of follow your passion, chart your own course, march to the beat of your own drummer, follow your dreams, and find yourself. This litany of expressive individualism is what he says. but he says it misleads. Why? And then notice how each of his body paragraphs after that, the topic sentence clearly lets you know how he's going to explain his next point about how this mantra, this idea of individualism, because it's not about you, it goes back to the title, misleads. Uh, on the top of 107, right, the second indented paragraph that starts with college grads are often sent out in the world amid rapturous talk of limitless possibilities, but, and then he finishes the thought. In the next paragraph that starts with today's graduates are told to find their passion and then pursue their dreams, right? And then 2 sentences later, he says, but the next body paragraph, most successful young people don't look inside and then plan a life. They look outside and find a problem which summons their life. Again, the contrast. Um, he says in 1, 2, 3, 4, the fifth indented paragraph on page 107 that starts with the words the graduates. The graduates, excuse me, the graduates are told to pursue happiness and joy, but, and then he finishes the contrast. And the last indented paragraph on page 107, finally, graduates are told to be independently minded and to express their inner spirit, but so his message is clear, and he definitely demonstrates the ability to see it from both perspectives. And then when you enter into his own reflection, if you would, in the conclusion, you realize that he says, right, the purpose in life is not to find yourself, it's to lose yourself. And he says the tasks of life are at the center of it. And again, notice how his conclusion starts with, again, he puts the word but in the second sentence. Today's grads enter a cultural climate that preaches the self as the center of a life. But, of course, as they age, they'll discover that the tasks of a life are at the center. So, just as your conclusion should repeat your point, review your supporting ideas, and reflect on the bigger picture, we see that this essay demonstrates that as well. Just as your essay should have clear body paragraphs, right, clearly structured with topic sentences, details, and transitional or concluding sentences, we see his does that as well. In addition to his intro paragraphs, providing what background on the subject and the topic, he clearly presents his thesis and he lets the reader know how he's going to support his argument. So just as most, if not all, of the essays we read for this class, hopefully you better understand the structure and the rhetorical strategies so that you can use them yourself when you're composing your own essays. Thank you for your attention. Let me know if you have any questions and stay tuned, more to come.